And here we go. The FETC interviews and connections and meeting amazing presenters continues. We are strong into our day. We're still setting up in the background. There's a band going on. If you hear some banging around, we heard some in the last session. Things are happening all day today, and we are extremely excited to welcome in our next presenter, Sylvia Martinez, who came. She's got a couple books we're going to talk about, her sessions, and all the great things. But before we do that, for those who don't know you or your work, share with us who you are in your journey in education.
Well, hi.
Hey.
Thanks for the exciting introduction. It's a good thing to have first thing in the morning.
Great.
So my name's Sylvia Martinez, and a lot of people know me now for a book I co-authored with Gary Steger called Invent to Learn, Making Tinkering and Engineering in the Classroom, talking about the maker movement in education. And it came out at a time when people were looking at the maker movement and seeing
There it is.
People were looking at the maker movement and thinking, wow, that's really fun and fantastic. But what does it have to do with education? And the reason we wrote the book is to build a bridge between those two ideas, that education can be fun and hands-on, and bringing back the idea that this isn't something new. This is something we've known for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We know kids do best when they're passionately involved with things they care about, with people who care about them. And so we wrote kind of a book to bridge all those communities, not to tell teachers what to do. Oh my God, there's some new things you have to do. No, it's to do what we know how to do best, and to remind ourselves that new tools come along all the time that make that easier, more exciting, make it more computational, more technology rich. And so the session we're doing today is about 10 years of the maker movement, the things that we've learned, the places we visited, the changes that have happened in the last 10 years and are about to happen once again. It's constant change with technology.
Absolutely. So that just doesn't happen. So what is your journey to get there?
Well, so I started out as an aerospace engineer and worked on a lot of very high-tech things. But as I got older, had kids, I became interested in learning. How does this thing happen? For me, school was very easy. And it was, I didn't understand that there was a lot of different processes, a lot of different paths. And when I started to study that, I went back, got a master's in education, and started to work with schools. I worked for a software company developing mathematics software, Math Blaster. You ever heard of Math Blaster?
Yep.
Old-fashioned.
Old school. I'm old.
Old school, yeah. People love it. There are like fan sites set up where like people like discuss 80s software. It's hilarious. Went on to run some nonprofits in education, trying to bring real science and technology, education, engineering and mathematics to the classroom. Because what I had in school was incredibly different from what I actually did when I got a job. There was a lot of tinkering and messing around and things not working. And it was very not the scientific method where you just tweak one variable. You wish you had one variable, right? I mean, everything is up in the air. Inventing something is completely different than this very cold, bloodless science that we hand kids, as if everything was developed on one path. Newton just sat down and figured all that stuff out. It's like, no, he struggled. A lot of people struggled. A lot of things that were invented were because of mistakes, right? Don't you love those stories? Somebody
right. You take those chances and just see where it goes.
Yeah, something boils over on the stove, and all of a sudden you've got synthetic rubber, and it's like, well, I didn't mean for that to happen. But then you figure it out, So allowing those experiences to happen in classrooms that are directed towards the big, powerful ideas that we want kids to learn is a passion of mine.
And I think all of those are amazing to be learned by people that are here today or the next few days. And I have your session scrolling through the bottom. But
Cool.
If you could share what you're going to be sharing here at FETC.
So, like the first session that Gary and I are doing together this morning is about the maker movement at 10 years on. And one of the things that happened after we wrote Invent to Learn is other people came to us and said, I want to write a book too about what I do in the classroom. And we were like, sure, I can do it. You can do it. They were like, no, I don't want to do all the publishing stuff. So we started a publishing company, and we just published our 15th book. You want to hold up
You got it. This one?
the other one? Yeah. The Invent to Learn Guide to the Microbit, which is a super fun, playful way to learn about this hot new technology. It's the latest thing in ed tech. And it's written by two Dutch educators who are just the most fantastic, imaginative people who've been doing workshops around the world sharing this technology. And we captured some of that whimsy, I hope, in the book. And we think it's going to be a worldwide sensation. So that's part of what we're going to be talking about. I'm also doing a session about biomaking and biohacking, which I think is kind of the next new thing for maker spaces, tackling the organic world. People look at making and go, 3D printing, maybe I could fit a little into some physical science, some
Sure.
electronics. But what about the rest of the world? What about everything else?
Exactly.
The field of biology has changed so much in the last decade, and we're still teaching the biology of the last century. What about GMOs? Kids can play around with some of these things, some of these controversies that are in the news, and make stuff, become familiar with the natural world. And I think that's a new frontier. And then I'm doing a session on ethics. So perfect timing for AI.
Absolutely.
Is it ethical to do your homework with AI?
True.
There's a lot of ethical questions that I think kids can tackle. We don't just do this to them. We should ask them to participate in the big questions of the day.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask, and last night we did live podcasts and we had a few people on, and two of my friends who are female came on and we're talking about a lot of the same things. And I asked them this question, and I know there's another great friend who's listening who would also call herself kind of a tech nerd. She does a lot with robotics. How do we get more women or young girls into this field?
I think that the answer for how do we get more women into the field is the same for how do we get everyone, how do we invite everyone, no matter
Sure.
what their interests are. If you're a ballet dancer or, can fix cars or want to be a football player, no matter who you want to be, there's a role for technology in these things. And I think that we do it by inviting people in, by creating experiences that are fair and equitable. If you're running, say, for example, a robot team at your school and it's all boys, you should be asking the question, why is that? And hey, if you can only have 10 people on the robot team and they're all boys, great. It'd be nice to have a few girls, but what about another experience? What about an experience that's non-competitive? Because a lot of kids who don't see themselves as geeks won't step into a competition.
Right.
Competitions tend to, by and large, disinvite girls.
Okay.
Girls do not choose to push themselves to the front of the room or the front of the line or grab the only robot kit right.
Right.
So being aware as an educator, it's like any other thing you do in school. Are all the kids getting turns on the playground? Do you kind of mentally think through, do I have any biases towards the kids that I like in class? And make sure that you're giving opportunities to everyone. A lot of people say to me, oh, you must have been so, self-confident when you were a kid to be in a field where it was all mostly men. And I was like, I wasn't self anything. I was such a dope. If someone was telling me that the girls weren't supposed to do things, it was just completely going over my head. I was very focused and didn't really pay attention to anything that was going on around me. But there were a few teachers who took a special interest in me, who looked at me, who talked to me, and there were men and women who changed my life. And I think that when educators, they've got so much to do, there's so much on your plate, but just trying to clear that out and taking time to talk to kids, to know kids, can change kids' lives. It did for me.
How did it change your life?
Well, feeling that I belonged, that someone saw me, that I wasn't just trudging through the school day,
Sure.
and I was a good kid, right? You do your homework, you do all this stuff, and you don't think anyone notices. And for a teacher to say, wow, this is what you did on this essay was really interesting. It's like, seriously? You read that? It was a big revelation to me that some of my teachers actually did care and thought about what I got sent to a special summer program one summer for like gifted mathematicians, and I was like, I'm not gifted, I'm not a mathematician, I don't get the best grades, I'm not one of the kids who always has their hand up. But that teacher saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I think that all kids need that validation from someone.
And I think that's critical as you talk about moving into the publishing space and supporting authors and supporting those who come in maybe with imposter syndrome of who's going to want to read what I write. How do you support your team in that same realm of making sure they see valued?
So I think teachers are a very self-critical bunch. A lot of times they don't feel like they have an audience. Social media has changed that. So some teachers have Twitter accounts and they find that they have colleagues around the world who think like they do. They're not the only one. It's very empowering. And so when I work with teachers to write a book, I talk to them about like what their brand is, what's the most important thing that they say to their kids, what's the thing that they say to parents when a new parent comes to school. Here's what we do in our class, and then try and summarize what that experience is, and help them just sort of like block out the kinds of things that go into a book. Like there should be 10 chapters, they should all be about 3 or 4 pages long. I mean, some things are just simple logistically that help you get the big ideas out. You can kind of hang your ideas on a structure. It's really helpful.
So you're, listening to you, and you're well versed in a lot of this technology. Again, here are the books: Invent to Learn, Guide to Microbit, and Invent to Learn, co-written with Gary Steiger. So, what do you come to an event like this and hope to take away from?
Well, first of all, meeting people. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So, the relationships that you build with other people can continue for years, for decades. Hearing what they're doing in their classrooms, finding out what's going on. I do go to the exhibit hall. I kind of think of myself as a skeptical optimist. I'm always hoping there's going to be some amazing thing that's going to do all the stuff it says on the booth banners. But I remain skeptical that any tool or technology is going to change education forever. Anything like that. So I look for tools and technology that empower students, things that students can do, not that can be things that are being done to students. Or I'm not interested in administrative tools. I have to admit, your bandwidth enhancer, fine. Somebody needs to buy that. Somebody needs to worry about that, not me. I'm thinking about things that kids can do, that put them in charge of the world, that give them a glimpse of the real world, and that they can then say, I can do this. I can do the next thing. I can do the next bigger thing. I can do the next bigger thing.
So what's scrolling down the bottom now is sylviamartinez.com/handouts. So two things. One, I hear now there's a smoothie machine behind us. So there's a band, a smoothie machine. So for those who are visiting, second thing, for those who are visiting sylviamartinez.com/handouts, what will they learn from that site?
So it's just a small collection of videos, of talks I've done, of links to handouts of the books, some selected articles that people ask me for all the time, like how to start a makerspace, things like that.
Sure. So as you start to dive into all your work here and the work that you do globally, what does Stronger Together mean to you?
Oh, it's a trick question.
No trick question. I've asked every guest for over a year.
It's obvious. I mean, how can you not be stronger together? You have to be able to work together with other people. You can't just sit in a corner and think, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, or if only I could. You can't. None of us can do this alone. We have to work together, and when we do, it creates kind of synergy that people coming together and talking create. And this is an amazing time. We're coming together after so long of being apart because of a global pandemic that none of us had any control over. A lot of us
Right.
went through things that, from very serious deaths and people we love, and, upheavals in your job and your community, to just it being kind of annoying that you can't get out and do the stuff you want to do.
Sure.
And here we are finally able to talk together and have lunch together and sit together, and, just the serendipity of running into someone that you knew 10 years ago. And it's like, oh my God, there's Barbara Liedl. And
Yeah, she's coming up next.
she's coming up, But Barbara, came to one of our Invent to Learn workshops like 10 years ago. And that's where I met her. Okay, we'll let Barbara.
We're going to talk about that in the next
We're
session.
going to talk about that in the next session. But yeah, I mean, those kinds of connections are priceless.
Wonderful. Well, it was great to meet you. I wish you the best success in an awesome event, and have a great next couple of days.
Well, you too. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, and make sure to check out all of Sylvia's work. Check out her books. Some great learning here. And if you're here down at FETC, jump into one of those sessions, or just see her walking around, meet her. She has a lot to share. Have a great day.
Thank you.